call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for January 25th, 2012. The first item on our agenda is the consideration of minutes for the regular meeting of December 19, 2011. Those minutes have been included with our agenda materials. Are there any corrections to those minutes? If not, those minutes will stand approved as presented, and we will move on to new business. We have one application today to consider. It is a variance request, though it has 7 component parts of it. It is application Z 12001 by Mr. Seth Sparkman of Barge, Cawthon and Associates for First Baptist Church in Murfreesboro. They are requesting the following variances. This is for property located at 200 East Main Street. First, pertaining to a proposed building addition, a 36-foot variance of the minimum required 42-foot front building setback along South Spring Street. Pertaining to a proposed transformer enclosure, a variance from Section 25E5 of the zoning ordinance, which states that in all commercial and industrial districts, accessory structures and uses shall comply with the same front setback as is required for the principal structure. Third, pertaining to the transformer enclosure, a 42-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback along East Vine Street. Fourth, pertaining to a proposed transformer enclosure, a 35-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback along South Spring Street. Fifth, pertaining to a proposed heating and air equipment, a variance from Section 25E5 of the zoning ordinance, which states that in all commercial and industrial districts, accessory structures and uses shall comply with the same front setback as is required for the principal structure. 6, again pertaining to the heating and air equipment, a 25-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback along East Vine Street. And finally, still pertaining to the heating and air equipment, a 10-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback along South Spring Street. All right, Mr. Blum, if you would review that application for us, please.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. Just in the introduction, I had plenty of time to warm up and make sure I knew what I was talking about. As you mentioned, we do have 7 components to this particular application, all variance requests pertaining to a proposed expansion at First Baptist Church, which is located at 200 East Main Street and is located in a commercial highway zone. The property is directly across the street from the Central Business District, so just west of the subject property, on the west side of South Spring Street is the Central Business District, which has no setback requirements. This property, however, being located in the commercial highway zone, must comply with the commercial highway setback requirements, and that is the reason why the applicant is before you today, because they are wanting to do some improvements on the property located in that front setback. So I'll kind of go over the area a little bit, then go over the requests, and you should keep in mind that all 7 requests will need to be taken in separate motions. First of all, I'll show you an aerial photo of the property. Here is the existing church sanctuary building, and the church property actually takes up about 3/4 of the block, bounded on the north side by East Main Street, on the west side by South Spring Street, on the south side by East Vine Street, and on the east side by South Academy Street. The East Main Church of Christ owns this property here, which takes up the remaining 1/4 of that block, and the East Main Church of Christ is also across South Academy as well. This is the SunTrust building here, which is located directly across, that's the Bank of America building that is located directly across Spring Street. SunTrust is on the north side of East Main Street. All of this, as I mentioned, this is part of the church's property as well. The main sanctuary is here, and these are buildings for, I believe it's their education wing and their life center, their Christian Life Center. And this area directly across the street, across East Vine, that's actually the fire department headquarters, to orient y'all a little bit to where that property is located. Now to zoom in a little bit more. And this is the church parcel here. This area here, it's kind of a little alcove off of South Spring Street where there's a small staff parking lot, and it also contains the existing transformer and heating and air equipment. The church would actually like to build an addition in that little alcove, and the primary reason for that addition, it's not going to expand the seating in the sanctuary, is that most of the pedestrian traffic for services comes to the front of the building, which is here at East Main Street, and so they've said that it can kind of get congested during services, and so they want to be able to provide a second way in and out. And also, the addition would also be comprised of some meeting rooms, library, new mechanical room. So there are several components to that addition, but they'd kind of essentially like to fill in that gap. And you can see that the existing sanctuary building and the existing education building, which are all connected together, are already encroaching into the front setback along all front property lines. The most recent addition was built in 1985, and it's this building here, located at the very southeast corner of their property, which would be the northwest corner of Vine and Academy. That was the gymnasium addition that was built in 1985, and they were granted setback variances by the Board of Zoning Appeals, essentially complete waivers of the 42-foot front building setback along both Academy and Vine in order to build that gymnasium. And once again, that was back in 1985. And I believe that was the most recent addition that the church has done. You'll see here, I've flipped it around so it could be long ways, but here is that little alcove that the church proposes to build an addition to. And because it is, because they're wanting to fill in the gap and not just stop at the 42-foot front setback line, which would put it somewhere around here, obviously they want to be even with the rest of the church building, which would put them about 5 or 6 feet from the front property line. So they've requested a 36-foot variance. I believe it'll be 6.5 feet from the front property line along South Spring Street, and I've rounded that request up to they requested a 6.5-foot, or excuse me, a 35.5-foot variance. I've just rounded that up to 36 feet for simplicity's sake. In addition, as I mentioned, this area here has their existing HVAC equipment and a transformer. This building addition will require them to relocate the HVAC equipment and the transformer to the south side of the building. Right now they have a little driveway, a little pull-through here along East Vine Street, and they are planning on enclosing that transformer, and that would protect the existing building from, those are going to be blast walls, so that the existing building is protected in case there is a malfunction with the transformer. And that enclosure is actually located, originally it was going to be located right on the East Vine Street front property line. They've actually pushed it back about 1.5 feet because staff did have some concerns with traffic sight distance at this intersection right here. And so in the interim, they've worked on that issue and have moved that enclosure back 1.5 feet so that it's not directly abutting up to the sidewalk, for one, and so that it gives the proper traffic sight distance. Our site plan review staff has reviewed the revised plans that came in and the traffic sight distance plan, and are comfortable with the revised location. The enclosure is actually slightly smaller than what was originally submitted as well. Now the HVAC equipment, which is rather sizable equipment. I'll show you some pictures of the existing equipment in a moment, is also being located within the front setback. And so they are requesting variances for the requirement that accessory structures, and we are classifying both the transformer enclosure and the HVAC equipment as accessory structures to the building or to the principal use on the property. Those are required to meet the same setbacks as the principal structure. So they would be required to meet that 42-foot front setback. Being that they have very little room to work with, they are proposing to locate those inside the front setback. So both the transformer enclosure and the HVAC equipment will need variances to the requirement that accessory structures in commercial and industrial zoning districts have to meet the same setbacks as the principal structure. And in addition, the transformer enclosure will need variances from both. If we could put the site plan back up on the screen. The transformer enclosure, which is right here at the corner, will need variances from the 42-foot front setback along both South Spring Street and East Vine Street. Now, the HVAC equipment will actually be located further away from Vine and Spring than the transformer enclosure, but yet it'll still be in that 42-foot front setback. So it will also need front setback variances along both Spring and Vine. Now, one thing that you don't have in your packets, because this is part of the revised submittal, this is the site distance diagram that was provided by the applicant's engineer, and you can see that the transformer enclosure is located outside of that traffic site distance triangle. And you'll notice in the staff comments, I did mention that we would have additional comments at the meeting because at that time this issue had not been resolved, and there were several other issues that needed to be resolved as well. But we went ahead and kept them on the agenda because we felt that they had a good understanding of what our concerns were. And they have addressed most of the concerns that our planning staff our site plan review staff had. And this item is scheduled to be on the February 1st consent agenda at the Planning Commission for site plan approval, provided that the variance requests are approved today by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So they have addressed the concerns that we have expressed to them. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention are a couple of the things, and the applicant has brought this up in his materials that he submitted. This is kind of an interface, as I mentioned, between the central business district and the area that has more suburban type zoning. And you can tell by the fact that the existing building is already encroaching a great deal into that front setback along all four front property lines that this property has, that it is it's more in line with the development that we have in the central business district with regards to front setbacks, and less in line with what we would see in the more suburban commercial highway zone. So it's kind of in an interesting position in that right across the street there would be a 0-foot front setback requirement, but because this is just outside of the central business district, that 42-foot front setback requirement kicks in. In addition, the subject property is consistent with the Manny Avenue Comprehensive Plan, which the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission and the Planning Department use for guidance when looking at developments or expansions or additions in the study area that was reviewed 6 or 7 years ago when the Manny Avenue Comprehensive Plan was reviewed by the Planning Commission. The plan identifies the subject property as being in the mixed-use transition district. It recommends that in the mixed-use transition district, structures should be built right up to the front lot lines. And as I've noted in many instances before, in general, the Manny Avenue Comprehensive Community Plan noted that in many instances, the suburban zoning requirements that are currently in place are not conducive to redevelopment of the older, more urbanized areas of the city. The applicant has addressed the requested revisions in the staff comments. Before I ask him to come up, I'd like to show you some pictures of the site and the surrounding area. This is the front of the church, looking at it from East Main Street. And there is a small playground along East Main Street as well that belongs to the church. And this is the side of the building facing South Spring Street. And in a moment we'll see that little alcove where they'll be building the addition. This is a continuation of the building along South Spring Street. And this is that little alcove where you've got the employee parking and the existing HVAC and transformer pad over here right now that they're proposing to relocate.
Hey, Matthew, can you, that's the picture there that I think is probably the most illustrative of what this looks before, and then can you show the diagram of what it's going to look like after?
Sure.
Like right now?
Sure.
Because it's essentially that gap's going to be filled in completely.
That's correct. If you look in this west elevation right here, this is that gap that's going to be filled in. And go back to the before.
So essentially, it's going to be a continuous roof line then from the family center, the life center, over to the sanctuary part of the church.
I believe the education and life center has a flat roof, and they're going to continue that flat roof. Looks like at a little lower height, and then the sanctuary has a pitched roof.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Now, right now, they've got a wall around the existing HVAC and transformer equipment, but I was able to stick the camera inside the wall and kind of give you an idea of, I think that's the existing transformer right there. And the existing HVAC equipment. This is the education building. Let me pull that over a little bit. That's the education building. So this is right here is very near the corner of Vine and Spring. Now here is right here at the corner of Vine and Spring. You can see right now they've got a little, that picture is getting pretty orange, isn't it? They've got a driveway access onto South Spring, and that will go away once the transformer enclosure is built. But there will still be access from this driveway onto Vine.
Can you show us on that picture where the enclosure would be?
Sure.
Maybe draw it on there?
It would essentially be, I mean, if you can envision that enclosure right over where this driveway is right here.
That's still going to be a pull-through?
No, no, this,
Blocked off.
it will, let me see. See, right now you've got, see, here's the drive, this is East Vine Street right here. And you've got this driveway coming in, and right now it goes straight out onto South Spring Street, and it also exits onto East Vine Street. They're essentially taking away the access point onto Vine, but keeping the access point on, or excuse me, taking the access point off of Spring, but keeping the access point onto Vine.
When you're forming that view triangle there for traffic, are there some sort of minimums that are used to form that thing? And
There's a formula that's in our zoning ordinance that our traffic engineer compares the drawings to,
Okay.
to make sure that it
the
complies.
student at that foot got all that satisfied?
Yes, yes. This is looking down that driveway. This is the south side of the education building right here. And that's the gymnasium where the variance was granted back in 1985. As you can see, it's right up to the front property line along Vine. This is looking north along South Spring Street, and you can see how close the existing building is to the front property line. And that the building addition itself that would be built in that little alcove would be essentially even with that existing building. And the driveway that I referenced earlier that's going to be staying, you'll see how you've got this driveway that goes under this canopy here and empties out onto Vine Street, and it also goes here where this car is parked and goes out onto South Spring Street. That will go away because that's where the transformer enclosure will be located, but people will still have the ability to exit out here onto Vine Street. And this is just a closer look at that corner where the gymnasium is. And once again, this is looking back to the west. Here's where the enclosure would be, and this is that drive going up the canopy that will circle back out onto East Vine Street. Now, just some photographs of the surrounding area. The Bank of America building, which is directly across South Spring Street. This is the East Main Church of Christ building that's on the same block as the First Baptist Church. Bank of America parking lot, which is right across the street from the where the enclosure will be going. This is just looking west down Vine Street from the corner of Vine and Spring. This is the fire department headquarters right across Vine Street from the subject property. And this is looking east down Vine Street. I know that's a lot to take in. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Mr. Sparkman is not available today, but Mr. Jeff Hooper, who is actually the design engineer on the project, is available. If you'd like for him to come up, if you have any questions for him, or if he has anything to add. But I'm also, as always, available for questions as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blomley. Any questions for Mr. Blomley?
Matthew, these enclosures, they're separate. They're going to be separate enclosures for the HVAC and then for the transformer.
The transformer will be in an enclosure. The HVAC equipment will actually be out in the open. It's my understanding from our site plan review staff that they'll have some landscape screening in front of them, but that they will not be in enclosures.
But there's still a variance for the equipment just being located there. It's still considered an accessory structure.
Yes.
So the aesthetics of these enclosures and our screening and all that's going to be dealt with when they go to the planning, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Mr. Hooper, anything you'd like to add to the application?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think I could add any more than Mr. Blumley has already presented to you, but I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Hooper? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, then, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed, and we'll open the floor for further discussion or motion. In considering motions, we do have 7 components, so we need 7 separate motions for this particular application. And I guess we'll just take those in the order they're presented. Probably consider first the proposed building addition, the 36-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further discussion, I move for approval of the 36-foot variance.
Second.
Subject staff comment.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, well, next consider the proposed transformer enclosure and the variance from Section 25E5 of the zoning ordinance.
Chairman Rogers, I make a motion we approve subject to staff comments.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll now consider the 42-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback for the proposed transformer enclosure.
Chairman Rogers, if I may make a comment about that, I do not believe that the full 42-foot variance is necessary any longer. I believe that, and if Mr. Hooper could confirm this, I believe that it is now 1.6 feet off the property line to keep it out of the site distance triangle.
That is correct.
Okay, so I think that it might be in order to modify that request to a 40.4 foot variance. Mr. Hooper, are you in concurrence with that?
That's fine with us.
Okay.
Okay. We will note that now as being an application for a 40.4-foot variance from the minimum required 42-foot front building setback for the proposed transformer enclosure.
I'll make a motion to approve the 40.4-foot variance.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll now consider the 35-foot variance from the 42-foot front building setback along South Spring Street for the transformer enclosure.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the 35-foot variance along with the comments from the staff.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next, we will consider the variance request for the heating air equipment, specifically from Section 25E5 of the zoning ordinance.
Chair, I move for approval of that variance, subject staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, now we'll consider again for the proposed heating and air equipment the 25-foot variance to the front building setback along East Vine Street.
Chairman Rogers, I make a motion we approve the 25-foot variance, subject to staff comments.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and finally, we'll consider for the heating and air equipment the 10-foot variance from the front building setback along South Spring Street.
Make a motion to approve the 10-foot variance.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Hooper, that application has been granted in its entirety. Looks like a real nice project. We'll be eager to see it go up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all's patience with us. All right, we'll now move on to staff reports and other business. There we need to consider amending the Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals rules of procedure regarding order of business. And while I do have those handy. Thank you. The amendments were included with our agenda materials. Matthew, I guess if you can just quickly summarize what those amendments are.
Be glad to. In our rules of procedure, we have an order of business for the way the agenda is supposed to be set up, and we use that as a guide every month when we're putting together the agenda. We have as you know, we have a new type of application that we get in, the weeds and grass exemption request that the Board of Zoning Appeals now hears. And really not sure where to put it on the agenda. I think 1 month I had it first on the agenda, and the next month I had it last on the agenda, the two first requests that we've gotten. So what kind of our thinking was in where to place that on the agenda. Those requests take a lot of manpower, if you will, because there are so many staff members from engineering department, fire department, building and codes department, and typically if there's an application filed for a weeds and grass exemption, from what we've seen, there is going to be public input as well. So what we are proposing is that the weeds and grass exemptions be placed first in the order of business, and then also when we were looking kind of comprehensively, instead of just amending this in a piecemeal fashion, we looked at sign variances, and there are many instances where Ms. Kerr has to sit through several hours of zoning-related matters to get to sign variances that are typically very, very fast to handle. And so what we have amended it to say is the proposed order of business would be consideration of minutes of the prior meeting, any old business, requests for weeds and grass exemptions, requests for sign ordinance variances, requests for variances, request for special use permits, amendment or revocation of special use permits, request for site plan approvals, appeals from administrative decisions, staff reports, and any other business to come before the board. And you can see how that's been revised from the existing order of business. So I wanted to get the board's thoughts on that proposed amendment, and if it sounds good to the board, possibly consider approving it as submitted.
All right. Any discussion on the proposed amendment?
Sounds like a good idea. Don't have any problems. What you think?
All right. If not, then was there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. That amendment has been approved, and I think finally, Matthew, you wanted to review a 2011 year-end building construction activity report.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Rogers. As you know, each year I try to provide you with the year-end building construction activity report, which summarizes the volume of applications that our Planning Commission has reviewed, permitting records from our Building and Codes Department, applications to the Historic Zoning Commission, and applications to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I think that you might find this interesting and good information to have. And really, there's only one sheet that I wanted to go over with you here at the meeting, and the rest of it you can look at your leisure. But the one sheet in there, the Board of Zoning Appeals Summary of Applications, and I'll just go over that quickly. In 2010, we saw 26 variance requests, and in 2011, we saw 32. In 2010, we saw 40 special use permit requests, and in 2011, we saw 35. Sign variances in 2011, we saw 7 as compared to 11 in 2010, and so on and so forth. The total number of applications actually went up from 2010 to 2011 by 6. We had 80 requests in 2010 as compared to 86 in 2011. So you can just kind of look at this, and it kind of encapsulates what all you have reviewed during the past year, and kind of compare that to what we looked at in 2010. At any rate, as I mentioned, you might find that the report in its entirety interesting.
Yeah, very good. It is an interesting report. Any of the members have any comments or questions about the report? All right. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate you getting that to us. All right. Any other business? If not, then we're adjourned.